The hot summer afternoon sun was pouring down on a small baseball park in Milton, Connecticut. A team of boys, no older than 10, were playing on the battered home field, dressed in baggy uniforms emblazoned with the insignia of their local league. Among them was a skinny, sandy-haired boy with a serious look, Zach Holland. He stood at the pitch, squinting his eyes against the sun as usual, clutching the ball in his small hand with a confidence that was surprising for someone his age. "Come on, Zach, you can do it." A clear girl's voice was heard from the edge of the field. Zach turned around for a moment. Amber, his childhood friend, was standing near the net. A red-haired girl in a faded baseball cap. She was a year younger than Zach, but she always attended all his games. Now Amber was waving her arms excitedly, encouraging her friend. Another fan was jumping up and down next to her, a skinny boy named TJ, Zach's best friend. TJ was waving his cap and shouting, "Zach, show them how it's done." With a small smile on his lips, Zach turned his attention back to the game. His teammates were on base, the score was tied, and it was a crucial moment. He glanced at the coach, who nodded as if to say, "Calm down, man." Zach took a deep breath, suppressing his nervousness, and focused on the opposing batter. The familiar silence of the small stadium was all around. Parents, seated on worn wooden benches, stood waiting. Somewhere a baby was screaming, but soon it was silent. Zach exhaled and threw the ball with all his might. There was a sound of impact, a bat hitting a ball. Zach's heart sank. "Foul!" the referee shouted, and the tension eased for a moment. Zach wiped his sweaty palms on the striped pants of his uniform. Another throw. He glanced at the corner bench, where his father, also wearing a baseball cap, clenched his fists, worried about his son. His mother sat nearby, seemingly praying silently, her hand pressed to her chest. "Pull yourself together, Zach," the boy muttered under his breath. He took his stance for the next pitch. The opposing batter looked bigger and older than Zach, maybe a 12-year-old junior in high school. But the fear was gone, and all Zach could think about now was throwing the ball into the catcher's glove. He threw it with a sharp motion, fast and low. The batter swung, but the ball whistled past the bat and landed softly in the catcher's glove. "Strike," the judge's voice boomed. The stands came alive. They were one strike away from victory. Zach caught his breath. His team, the Milton Raccoons, could have won the Little League title that day. They just had to give it their all. He caught the coach's eye for a second. He gave him a thumbs up. "All right, kid, play your best." Zach glanced back at the batter. He was clearly nervous, shifting from foot to foot, trying to guess the next pitch. Another deep breath. Throw. This time the batter hit it, the pop loud, the ball arcing over the near base. Zach froze, watching the ball fly toward center field. But there it was, caught in mid-air by our shortstop. "Out," the referee barked. A second later, the stadium exploded with joyful shouts. The game was over. Zach's team had won. The boys in uniform ran up to each other, hugged, slapped each other on the back. Zach stood there stunned. His last serve had decided the match. He saw his dad jump up, throwing his hands up, and his mom wiping tears of joy from her cheeks. "We are the champions," TJ yelled at the top of his voice, jumping over the low fence and running towards his friend. Amber ran onto the field, not far behind. Zach woke up from his stupor and rushed to meet them. His friends threw themselves at him in hugs. TJ ruffled his hair, laughing. "What a serve, dude. You made them." Amber, out of breath, her eyes sparkled. "I knew you could do it, Zach." He stood between them, the two closest people, and felt his chest tighten with joy. This was their common victory, his, the team's, the entire town that was rooting for them. "Thank you," Zach exhaled, still not fully believing that everything had worked out. "You're a real champion," TJ announced with an air of importance, clapping Zach on the shoulder. "You'll be a famous pitcher someday, I'm sure of it." "Me too," Amber chimed in, smiling. "We'll be proud to have known you since childhood." Zach was embarrassed. "Oh, come on. I wouldn't have done anything without a team." He looked around. His teammates were having fun, Someone was already running to receive the trophy, a small but shining gold cup on a wooden stand. The coach was calling the team to congratulate him. Parents began to come out onto the field to their children. Somewhere behind, someone's dog was barking. The atmosphere was chaotic and happy. Zach felt Amber take his hand, getting his attention. "Let's go get the cup, Mr. Champion," she said playfully. Her touch made the boy's cheeks turn slightly pink, but he nodded. Amber had always been there. Today, she was as happy for him as if she had won. TJ winked and ran ahead, toward the coach and the boys. Zach and Amber followed a little behind, across the dusty field. She was still holding his hand, and for some reason Zach felt the touch very keenly warm and trusting. He glanced at Amber. Flushed from running, with a strand of hair escaping from under her baseball cap, she seemed happy. Catching his gaze, the girl smiled broadly. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. Zach's heart fluttered at those simple words. He suddenly realized that he wanted Amber to always be there like this, holding his hand and smiling at him. It was a new, unfamiliar feeling before. He had just been friends with her, without thinking about anything more. But now, for some reason, he wanted to remember this moment forever. "Hey, you two, Common," TJ called from the field, waving. "Zach, coach is waiting for you." Zach snapped out of his thoughts and let go of Amber's hand, slightly embarrassed by his own impulse. "Let's go," Amber responded for both of them and was the first to rush forward. Zach ran after him, catching up with his friends. That evening, all of Milton celebrated the victory of the children's team. An impromptu procession was organized on the main street of the town. The kids walked in uniform, not letting go of the gold cup. Parents and neighbors clapped, smiled, and someone filmed the event on a video camera. Zach walked ahead with his comrades, and next to him proudly walked TJ and Amber, like loyal comrades. Stopping at the city park, the team lined up on the steps of the gazebo for a group photo. The coach stood in the center with a cup, hugging the two closest players at once. Zach found himself between TJ and Amber, and they laughed and hugged him from both sides, almost knocking him over. "Hey, easy," he laughed, trying to keep his balance. The photographer, a local newspaper reporter, raised his camera. "Okay, smile, let's say cheese." "Cheese," everyone shouted in unison. The flash went off. The picture that would later appear in the Milton Gazette showed the three friends standing side by side, Zach in the middle, his face flushed and happy, TJ and Amber on either side, holding his shoulders. All three were beaming with hopeful joy. After the photos, the picnic began. Parents brought treats. The children immediately pounced on lemonade, hot dogs, and homemade pastries. The air was filled with a smell of freshly cut grass and smoke from a portable grill. The sun was setting, but no one was in a hurry to leave. Zach sat on the grass with TJ and Amber, forgetting about formalities and munching on his second hot dog. For the first time that day, he was able to relax a little. Victory, thank God, was already in the bag. He could enjoy the moment. "So, champ, what's your plan now?" TJ asked, deftly tossing the ball in his hand, the same one Zach had used to make his last strike. The ball was later given to him as a keepsake. Zach shrugged. "I don't know. I guess I need to train even more. In a couple of years, we'll already be playing for a school team. The guys there are older. It will be difficult." Amber snorted. "You're always talking about baseball. What about fun? The holidays have just begun. Let's go to the lake tomorrow instead. Let's celebrate the victory properly." TJ picked up on the idea. "Exactly. You can't think about training all the time. I heard it's going to be hot tomorrow, perfect for swimming." He nudged Zach with his shoulder. "Mr. Perseverance, are you with us?" Zach smiled. He really was already thinking about when he could go out and practice with the ball again. But his friends were waiting for an answer, and he didn't want to refuse. Okay, let's go to the lake," he agreed. "But only during the day. I still have training with Dad in the evening." TJ rolled his eyes, but Amber laughed. "Oh, this baseball. It's okay, we'll distract you for a little while. Right, T?" "Yeah," TJ nodded. "Let's buy some soda. Get an inflatable ball. Let's call some more guys. We can, Zach agreed. The more, the merrier. Amber narrowed her eyes slyly. Maybe we should take fishing rods, too. Let's try to catch something for dinner. Zach laughed. You hate fishing. In 5 minutes, you'll get tired of sitting quietly. The girl snorted, pretending. So what? But you and TJ will be like two old men sitting on the porch with these fishing rods, and I'll go for a swim in the meantime. TJ winked at Zach. She's telling the truth. You and I are two old men obsessed with fishing and baseball. And Amber is a big shot, Zach teased back. She'll sunbathe like a beach queen. Amber snorted and playfully threw a blade of grass at Zach. That's it, you'll see. I'll catch the biggest fish tomorrow. You'll laugh then. The friends laughed together. The sun was setting, gilding their faces. At that moment, everything was simple and easy. The three inseparable friends had a whole summer full of adventures ahead of them, and it seemed that their whole life was just beginning. While the story is picking up speed, click like and subscribe. It's a second for you, a signal for me to keep going. Several years passed. Milton Baseball Park seemed much smaller to Zach than it had in his childhood, but it was still the site of his triumphs. In high school, Zach Holland became the #1 pitcher for Milton High. People recognized him from the stands. The guy who had led the children's team to victory a few years earlier was now shining among the teenagers. Zach's teammate was TJ, no longer a skinny boy, but a tall young man with a polished pitch and reliable batting. They were still inseparable, understanding each other on the field without saying a word. That May evening, the school stadium was buzzing with jubilation. Milton High had won the state championship game. Zach stood on the pitcher's mound, hands on his hips, catching his breath. He had closed the opponent's last outing with 3 straight strikes, and now his team was celebrating a 5-3 victory. The boys were jumping and shouting, hugging, ripping off their caps. TJ was one of the first to run up to Zach and, laughing, hung on his shoulders. We did it, buddy, state champions. Zach smiled, breathing heavily from the intense game. He hugged his friend back. Yeah, man, we did it. A little further away, the rest of the players were already running around the field with the school flag. The coach, a young man named Coach Davis, was clapping the winners on the back, not hiding his pride. In the stands, among the jubilant fans, a redhead stood out Amber. She, of course, was at the game, and now, having gone down to the edge of the field, she waved her hand at Zach with a happy cry. Zach, TJ, you're the best. Zach caught her eye and smiled even wider. His heart skipped a beat with pride and joy. Amber had always believed in him, and he had once again lived up to her expectations. Soon the entire team headed to the stands to receive congratulations. Amber practically ran up to Zach and, not holding back her emotions, threw her arms around his neck. I'm so happy. You're just great. Zach held her close for a second, closing his eyes. Her warm embrace after a tense match was the best reward. Thank you, Em, he whispered into her hair. TJ's chuckle was heard nearby. Hey, lovebirds, be careful. The school newspaper photographer is already heading our way. Amber pulled away, blushing, but Zach just chuckled and, putting his arm around her shoulders, turned to the photographer who had come up. He took a couple of pictures, the players with medals around their necks, the coach with the trophy, and in all of them, Zach was in the center as the team captain. In one of the shots, he was standing next to Amber, who was beaming no less than the winners, and on the other side was TJ, giving her a thumbs up. This photo would later be put on the front page of the local newspaper. After the official part, the awards ceremony, and speeches by the school principal, the most pleasant moment came. The guys went to celebrate the victory. At their favorite diner, Bob's, around the corner from the school, tables were set for the team. The baseball players and their friends noisily tumbled inside. It smelled of fried burgers and French fries. A popular song was playing on the speakers. It seemed to be one of the latest hits, to which the teenagers immediately began to sing along. Zach settled into a corner at a long table, feeling a pleasant tiredness in his body. Next to him was Amber, who didn't let go of his hand, Opposite him was TJ and a couple of other guys from the team. Everyone was talking at once, interrupting each other. The adrenaline from the match was still boiling. Did you see how Zach threw that last strike? One of the younger players gushed, waving his arms. Just a bullet into the zone, the batter pecked the air. The guys laughed. Zach was embarrassed. "Oh, come on," he smiled. "The defense worked there. I couldn't have done it without you." Modest, TJ snorted, throwing a napkin at his friend. "Everyone knows who stole the game today." "You played great too," Amber noted, nodding at TJ. "Your double in the 8th inning brought in some important points." "Yeah," one of the guys confirmed. "Without that push, we wouldn't have taken the lead." TJ waved it off, but it was clear that he was happy about the praise. Zach looked at his friend with gratitude. He and TJ always supported each other on the field. Zach may have been the captain and the best pitcher, but without his friend's reliable shoulder, he would not have become who he was. The conversation gradually turned to the future. The school year was coming to an end, and adult life loomed ahead. "Where are you going, Zach?" asked the captain of the opposing team, stopping by for drinks on the way. "He's already been accepted," Amber answered proudly for Zach. "To the University of Connecticut on an athletic scholarship." Several people gasped in approval. Zach nodded sheepishly. "Yes, in Yukon." "Wow, that's cool," the opposing captain whistled. "Congratulations, dude." "Thank you." "Well, what about you, TJ?" someone from his own group asked. TJ shrugged slightly. "I also applied to the University of Connecticut. There is a chance. The coach called someone, I think. Maybe they'll take me on the team." Zach turned to his friend. "Really? You didn't tell me." He chuckled. "I wanted to make it a surprise. What if it didn't work out? Then why waste time talking?" "You'll do it," Amber said enthusiastically. "They have to take you. You're a great player." TJ looked at her gratefully. "Thanks, Yem." Zach felt a warmth spread through his chest. If he and TJ both ended up at UConn, the dream of continuing to play together would become a reality. And Amber seemed to be planning on going there, too. She'd long said she wanted to go to school close to home, and UConn was the perfect place for that. "If everything works out, the three of us will be there in the fall, just like we dreamed," Zach said, smiling. He squeezed Amber's hand under the table. "Together." Amber responded with a light squeeze. "The main thing is to get in. But you're already 100% there." "Big deal." Zach rolled his eyes playfully. "They're not hiring me for my brains. They're hiring me for my ability to throw a ball." "Hey, don't be modest." Amber shook her head. "You have good grades. And anyway, what makes you think you don't have brains?" TJ laughed. "Yes, Holland, you are talented in everything. You are doing well in your studies and in sports." Zach became even more embarrassed. "Come on," he muttered. "I was just lucky that the university coaches noticed me." "Not just lucky, you deserve it," Amber said seriously, looking him in the eyes. "You worked so hard. We all know." Her gaze was so sincere and warm that Zach involuntarily felt embarrassed, not because of his friend's praise, but because of how much he loved this girl. Yes, Amber was no longer just a childhood friend. For the last couple of years, they had been dating as boyfriend and girlfriend. Their first kiss happened last year, after one of the games, and since then their feelings have only grown stronger. It seemed natural that they would have a life together ahead of them. One college, then maybe a wedding. The thought gave Zach a brief thrill. Weddings, of course, it was too early to think about that. They were only 17. But he had little doubt. Amber was the one, the only one. They had been through so many stages together since childhood that he simply couldn't imagine another girl by his side. "Hey, Zach," lost in thought. His classmate called out cheerfully, pulling him out of his thoughts. "Dreaming about training in college?" "No, he dreams of becoming an MLB star, right, Holland?" Another winked. "MLB can wait," TJ answered for Zach. "I need to prove myself in college first." "Well, Zach can handle that," Amber intervened again, looking proudly at the guy. Zach smiled sheepishly and, deciding to change the subject, stood up. People who wants ice cream, I'm treating the winners. Oh me, several voices responded at once. Zach chuckled and headed to the order counter, and TJ jumped up after him. I'll help you get it across. Leaving Amber chatting with her friend, the boys pushed their way to the counter. While the guy behind the counter was scooping ice cream into tall glasses, TJ leaned over to Zach and quietly asked, Look, you probably could have gone to study anywhere, right? You were invited to a couple of other places. Why did you choose to stay in Connecticut? Zach looked at his friend, surprised by the question. Well, there's a good university here, and then it's close to home. TJ looked sideways, raising an eyebrow skeptically. Come on, Zach. You're the captain of the state championship team. You really had better offers. I remember you talking about some college in Florida. Zach shrugged. That program is good, but it's far away. And here, I want to stay close to my family, and... He hesitated for a second, but decided to be honest. Amber is applying here too. I don't want to go 1,000 miles away. TJ nodded, looking at his friend with a searching expression. I thought so. You really love her, right? Zach felt a slight heat on his cheeks, but he didn't look away. Yes, I love you. TJ smiled briefly. You're lucky to have found such a girl since childhood. Not everyone is so lucky. Zach heard a strange note in his voice. And you? You have plenty of admirers. He tried to cheer up his friend. That same Jessica from the support group, she never takes her eyes off you. TJ snorted. Jessica passed. I don't know. No one yet. He shrugged, and there was a moment of silence between them. The guy behind the counter pushed a tray of ice cream over. Zach and TJ started taking glasses. It's okay, you'll find it in college, Zach said quietly after a pause. TJ nodded. Probably. Okay, let's go. Otherwise, they'll be drooling. They returned to the table, handing out dessert to their classmates. The fun continued, but Zach caught TJ's thoughtful gaze for a while longer. He even thought he saw some hidden worry in his friend's eyes. Maybe he was just sad that school was over and their paths could diverge. Zach didn't attach much importance to it, deciding that everyone would be together again in the fall. Late in the evening, as the party died down and the kids began to leave, Zach walked out onto the porch of the diner with Amber. TJ was lingering inside, talking to the guys, and Zach took advantage of the opportunity. The night sky was clear, the stars shining over the quiet streets of Milton. Amber shivered the May nights weren't yet warm, and Zach immediately wrapped his arms around her, holding her close to keep her warm. She looked at him tenderly. I can't believe school is over. We just entered, and graduation is already in a week. Yeah, time flies, Zach said softly. He looked into her eyes. I'm glad we did it right. Winning the championship is a great ending. Amber smiled. I'm so proud of you. Me? Zach shook his head. You worked so hard too, graduated with honors. Smart girl. That's different, the girl waved her hand. Your victories are so bright. Today the whole city was shouting your name. Zach was embarrassed and quietly objected. Our name, teams, and yours too. Without your support, I would never have managed. Amber rose up on her toes and lightly touched his cheek with her lips. I like supporting you. Zach turned his face, catching her lips with his own. Amber responded softly and warmly. The porch boards creaked under their feet. Somewhere off to the side, the kids were laughing as they left. Everything was mixed up, the distant sounds of the night town, the taste of cherry syrup from the ice cream on Amber's lips, and the sharp joy of being close to the girl she loved. When they pulled away, Amber said quietly, Everything will change in the fall, right? A little, Zach agreed, but the main thing is that we'll be together. Me, you, I hope TJ too. I hope so too, she nodded. He really wants to go. It will work, Zach said confidently. They were silent for a moment. Amber leaned her head against his shoulder. You know, sometimes I think, how wonderful that we met so early in this life. There is so much ahead, and we are already together. Zach felt a lump in his throat from the overwhelming feeling. He gently stroked her red hair. I promise it will always be like this. Amber looked at him seriously. Don't make plans for your whole life, but I really want this too. The door to the diner opened and a smiling TJ appeared. Well, are we going home? The boys pulled away from each other and laughed. They had completely forgotten about everything around them. Yes, it's time, Zach nodded. The three friends set off along the quiet streets, lit by the occasional lantern. New roads awaited them: college, adult life, but tonight they were just happy graduates, full of hope and confident that friendship and love would carry them through any trials. University life swirled the friends into a whirlwind of new impressions. The campus of the University of Connecticut in Stores turned out to be huge compared to the familiar Milton. The first days of study made Zach a little timid: lecture halls, crowds of students, strict professors. But there were familiar faces nearby. TJ managed to enroll and even make it onto the university baseball team, albeit not as a leading player in his first year. Amber, who entered the journalism department, lived in a female dorm nearby. The three of them stuck together and gradually got used to it. Zach and TJ were absorbed in training with the Yukon Huskies. Already in the first season, Zach made a name for himself. His fast pitches and composure on the mound allowed him to become one of the team's key pitchers. TJ was more often at bat as an outfielder and sometimes pitched in training. He tried to keep up, although the coaches were counting on Zach first and foremost. Amber threw herself into her studies. She wrote for the school newspaper, often interviewing athletes, including Zach and the other guys on the team. Sometimes, reading her notes on games, Zach was surprised by how sensitive she was to the game, even though she had never played. Her pride for the team was evident in every word, and it seemed a special tenderness when it came to number 12 him. Time flew by. School, practice, short dates between couples' life was busy. Zach and Amber tried to spend every free minute together. Whether they cooked dinner together in the dorm kitchen, sat side by side in the library taking notes, or simply walked around campus in the evening, holding hands and discussing the future. In his sophomore year, Zach and the team went to their first big competition, the NK Regional. They didn't make it to the finals, getting eliminated in the quarterfinals, but the experience toughened the team up. Zach pitched in 2 games and posted impressive strikeout statistics. The coaches predicted a bright future for him. After one of the games, a strange man wearing a baseball cap with the Boston Red Sox logo approached him. Introducing himself as a scout for an MLB team from Boston, he exchanged a few words with Zach about his plans for the future. Zach's breath caught in his throat. For the first time, the dream of a professional league was becoming tangible. That evening, he excitedly told Amber about it, barely containing his delight. Can you imagine? He told me to keep working and hinted that he would keep an eye on my progress. Maybe in a year or two, if everything goes well, I will be selected in the draft. Amber smiled as she listened, although a shadow of worry flickered in the depths of her brown eyes. This is amazing, Zach. You've been dreaming about this your whole life. He noticed the change in her mood and asked cautiously, Are you happy? Or is something wrong? I'm glad, of course, she hastened to assure, lowering her gaze. It's just, if they take you, it's a move, a new life. I'll be happy for you, it's just so fast. Zach squeezed her hand in his. It's not decided yet. Even if they call, we'll decide everything together, okay? I won't leave you, Em. Amber smiled warmly and snuggled closer to him. I know. Let's just not make any predictions. For now, we still have 2 years of college ahead of us. Zach hugged her, looking into her face. Hey, what 2? There's already 1.5 left, he joked. Even more so, she shook her head. Time will fly by. Indeed, the rest of his college years passed quickly. In his junior year, Zach solidified his role as the Huskies' lead pitcher. The team made the conference playoffs, and while they failed to win a title, a string of consecutive wins made them a national draw. Sports publications called Zach Holland a promising young talent with early MLB draft prospects. Amber, after reading one of these articles out loud in their rented apartment, She and a friend rented an off-campus place during their senior year, and Zach was a frequent visitor, joked, "Look, Killer Serve Holland. How do you like that nickname, Mr. Killer Serve?" Zach laughed as he fell onto the old faded sofa with her. "They're writing nonsense. I haven't achieved anything yet, and they're still blowing it out of proportion." Amber settled down next to him, hiding her smile. "They know better. Maybe it's time to get used to fame?" "Ha!" he snorted, burying his nose in her shock of red hair. "I'm only used to you. The rest is unimportant." The pressure mounted in his fourth year. Amber had her thesis, Zach and TJ had crucial games to play, and the MLB draft, the annual selection for professional teams, was approaching. Zach tried not to think about it, lest he jinx his luck. But with each passing day, the excitement grew inside him. TJ also applied for the draft. Although he did not have such high-profile achievements, he hoped that some club would notice him as a versatile player. Zach supported his friend as much as he could, although he knew that TJ's chances were more modest. Over the long years of friendship, there was no envy between them. TJ sincerely rejoiced at Zach's successes, and Zach appreciated his friend's hard work and perseverance. In the spring, literally a couple of weeks before graduation, what they had dreamed of since childhood came true. Zach received news. He was selected in the third round of the draft. The dream team he had liked since childhood, the New York Yankees, took Holland. That same evening, his agent called him. The college helped him find an agent in advance, giving him the details. He had to sign a contract and go to rookie training camp in the summer. The news came suddenly, and Zach sat there for a moment, staring at his phone, unable to move. TJ was sitting next to him on the dorm bed, waiting for a reaction. Finally, the meaning of what was said sinking in, Zach looked up. "I was chosen." My voice broke. "The Yankees, that's..." TJ shouted joyfully. "Dude, this is awesome. Congratulations." The friends jumped up and hugged each other tightly. Zach still couldn't believe it. He was a Yankees player. Although there was a long road ahead through the farm clubs, the fact of being chosen by the legendary team was awe-inspiring. "I told you they'd take you," TJ said excitedly, clapping him on the back. "You deserve it more than anyone." "What about you?" Zach asked, waking up. He immediately felt a pang of conscience. Their dream had always been common. TJ was silent for a second, then smiled. "Me? Not yet. But it's okay, I still have my whole life ahead of me. Maybe I'll sign as a free agent somewhere. Don't worry." Zach wanted to say something, but at that moment the door swung open and a beaming Amber flew into the room. "I just found out. Zach." She threw herself on his neck. He picked her up in his arms and spun her around. We did it. I mean," he laughed, overcome with emotion. "I got it." Amber hugged him tightly. "I knew. I believed it." Tears of happiness glistened on her eyelashes. TJ watched happily nearby, and Zach, still hugging Amber, reached out, pulling his friend into a shared embrace. The three of them stood in the middle of the cramped room, laughing, almost crying with joy. It was a moment of triumph that children from a small town field once dreamed of. A few days later, graduation took place. Under the summer sun, in a black robe and a square cap, Zach went up on stage to receive his diploma. Somewhere in the crowd of graduates, he saw Amber and TJ, who had already received theirs. Parents waved from the stands, taking pictures. But fate had already given him the greatest gift. A professional career lay ahead. After the ceremony, the graduates and their families went off to celebratory parties. Zach invited Amber for a walk around the quiet campus, now deserted, with cottonwood leaves rustling slightly in the wind. They left their diplomas in their parents' car, and now they could simply enjoy their last evening within the walls of the university. They walked hand in hand down the alley, where the yellow light of the street lamps was reflected in the puddles from the recent short rain. Amber pressed herself against Zach's shoulder. "Well, that's it. We're graduates. I can't even believe it." "Yeah," he replied. 4 years are behind us." "Do you remember how scared you were on the first day?" She smiled. "I got lost between the buildings, and you were looking for me on the phone." Zach laughed. "Exactly. You were also angry that you didn't have a campus map at hand. It's good that we feel like home here now," Amber sighed. "I'll miss it." They stopped at a small pond where a pair of lazy ducks lived. Zach took both her hands in his. "A new life lies ahead. I..." He suddenly felt a strong excitement, as before a major match. "I've long wanted to say, or rather ask." Amber tilted her head, looking at him intently, her face dimly lit by the lantern, her eyes dancing with the light reflected in the water. Zach squeezed her fingers a little tighter, then, steeling himself, dropped to one knee. His heart pounded in his throat as he pulled a small velvet case from his pocket. Amber gasped, covering her mouth with her free hand. "Amber," Zach began hoarsely, "you and I have known each other almost our entire lives. You are the most precious person to me. I can't imagine my future without you. Will you marry me?" He opened the case, showing a simple, elegant ring with a small diamond. A month ago, he had secretly gone to the city and chosen it, consulting with his mother. Now the ring trembled slightly in his hand. Amber looked from the ring to him, and suddenly tears welled up in her eyes. "Oh God, Zach." For a moment his heart sank, afraid that she would cry from rejection. But Amber nodded, pressing her hands to her chest. "Yes, yes, of course." Zach smiled so widely that his cheekbones hurt. He stood up and Amber rushed to hug him, ignoring the ring that was extended to her. He laughed and hugged her tightly, feeling incredibly relieved and happy. "Wait," he breathed out after a few seconds, pulling away. He took her left hand and with trembling fingers put the ring on her ring finger. "That's it." Amber sobbed and kissed him, long and deep, putting all the love she had accumulated over the years into the kiss. Somewhere a frog croaked in a pond, and a breeze rustled the leaves. There was no one around, just the two of them and the stars above. When they finally pulled away from each other, Amber laughed through her tears. "I don't believe it. I don't believe that this is happening." "You're my bride now," Zach said tenderly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. He liked this new word, bride. "I'm the happiest person in the world." "And me," she whispered. They stood by the pond for a long time, talking through laughter and kisses about how they would tell their parents, how they would start planning the wedding. Amber wanted a small ceremony at home in Connecticut next summer when Zach could take a vacation between games. Zach agreed to everything. He only cared about one thing, having her there. That night, they returned to their families as a married couple. They had a new adult life ahead of them. Zach was going to Yankees training camp in a couple of weeks, and Amber was looking for a media job near New York to be closer to him. They seemed like the perfect couple, and it seemed like nothing could ruin their happiness. The year following the engagement passed in a flash for Zach, but not without its challenges. After a short vacation in his native Milton, he headed to the Yankees rookie training camp. Saying goodbye to Amber was not easy. Although New York was relatively close, Zach was assigned to a farm club based in Florida. Several months of hot weekdays at the minor league base lay ahead. Amber stayed in Connecticut, moving in with her parents for now and preparing for the wedding scheduled for the following July. She got a job as a freelance correspondent for a regional publication, a job that allowed her to be flexible and simultaneously deal with organizational chores. The separation was a trial. At first, Zach and Amber called each other every night, sharing news and dreaming about how soon they would live together. Zach talked about the grueling training sessions in the scorching sun, about his first game for a minor league team. Amber talked about how she chose a beautiful place for the ceremony by the lake near Milton, about the search for a dress. There was a smile in her voice, although sometimes, when he hung up, Zach felt a heaviness in his soul. He wanted to be there, to help with the preparations, to share these worries. But the schedule left no chance to get away. In the spring, the connection became less frequent. The game season began, moving from city to city. Zach played for a class league team, traveling around the southern states. Amber also kept herself busy with work, and sometimes it was difficult to coordinate a time to call. Instead of daily conversations, they switched to several calls a week. Sometimes, hearing the tired voice of his fiancée on the phone, Zach painfully felt guilty that the burden of her preparation fell on her alone. He wrote messages in every free minute, trying to cheer her up, promising that in the summer, when the season was interrupted for a couple of days, he would rush home and help. One evening in mid-May, he finally got a weekend away from home to Connecticut. The teen got a short break, and Zach, almost beside himself with joy, boarded a plane to New York and then a train home. He imagined how he would surprise Amber without telling her he was coming. The Hollands yard was lush with young greenery when the taxi dropped him off at the gate. Zach barely had time to open the front door with his key when his mother peeked out of the kitchen. Zach, what a surprise! Joy and worry mixed on her face. You didn't say you were coming before. A little vacation, Mom, he smiled, hugging her. Just for a couple of days, but I decided to get away. The father emerged from the living room, wiping his hands with a towel. Son, you're just in time. I was going to go help the Stewarts with the fence, but now I'll run away early. I need to spend time with you. Zach knew that his father was hinting that he would vacate the house for his son to meet his bride. He nodded gratefully. Amber was supposed to arrive in an hour. They had agreed to have dinner with Zach's parents. Only Amber herself did not know that the groom was already here. Zach's mother decided to leave it as a pleasant surprise. After the elder Hollands left, Zach showered after the drive and changed into a clean shirt and jeans. He was filled with excitement, as if he were about to go on a first date. He hadn't seen Amber in 3 months. He imagined holding her, inhaling the familiar scent of her hair. The doorbell rang. Zach rushed to open it. Amber stood there, holding a basket of pie for dinner. When she saw Zach, she froze, and then her eyes widened. Zach, surprise, he smiled. Amber almost dropped the basket and, forgetting everything, rushed to him. He hugged her tightly, feeling how she trembled in his arms. How are you here? When did you arrive? Just now, he laughed, burying his face in her hair. I couldn't wait any longer. I missed you so much. Amber looked up, her eyes shining. I missed you a lot too. She kissed him, greedily, passionately, as if trying to make up for all the months of separation. Zach felt the salty taste of her tears on his lips and pulled away, alarmed. Are you crying? No, silly, she smiled through her wet eyelashes. I'm just happy. You have to warn me about such surprises, otherwise your heart will jump out. He stroked her cheek. No way, then it wouldn't be a surprise. You're so tired. Amber shook her head. Everything is fine, now that you are here. Together they walked into the house. Amber handed over the basket of pie, and Zach set it on the kitchen table. He noticed that the bride looked thinner and somehow tense. There were shadows under her eyes. As she took off her light jacket, Zach asked softly, Are you sure you're okay? Maybe you took on too much? Amber sighed and turned away, opening the refrigerator. There's just a lot to do. I work and I'm planning a wedding. Sometimes, I admit, I get exhausted. Forgive me, he said quietly, coming up behind her and putting his arm around her shoulders. I'm sorry I'm not here. She patted his hand with her hand. It's not your fault. You have your own important goal. Our important goal, Zach corrected. After all, this is all for the sake of our future. Amber closed the refrigerator door and turned to face him. He looked into her eyes. Let's go together right after the wedding. Enough of this separation. You wanted to find a job in New York, remember? The girl nodded. I tried, but it's hard to find a place in a major publication without experience. I'm writing articles as a freelancer for now. It's okay, the main thing is that we'll be together, Zach said hotly. We'll rent a place to live, even if it's tough at first, and then we'll get settled. Amber smiled weakly. You say it so confidently, I'm afraid to guess. What if your schedule is such that we won't see each other there either? During the season, maybe so, Zach admitted, but you can go to games with me sometimes. Other wives do. Yes, probably, she lowered her eyes. Okay, let's not talk about this now. As you say, Zach nodded. They returned to the living room. Zach noticed a box of wedding invitations and a stack of envelopes on the table. "What is this?" He nodded at them. "Oh, I was just about to send out the invitations," Amber replied, sitting down on the couch. "I've already sent out most of them, but there are a few left." Zach took one of the invitations. The beige card read in gold letters, "Zach Holland and Amber Stewart invite you to their wedding celebration." Below were the date and location mid-July, a lakeside resort near Milton. He felt a warm thrill as he read their names side by side. "Beautiful," he smiled, lowering the postcard. "It's already mid-May, and soon it will be my birthday." Amber nodded. "Yes, 2 months left. Just a little bit." Zach sat down next to her and pulled her towards him. "I know you're worried, but everything will go fine. We'll get through this." She didn't answer, she just pressed herself against him. He felt her warmth through the thin fabric of her blouse and thought that for these minutes of intimacy, he was ready to go through any trials. That evening, Zach's parents returned, and over dinner, laughter and conversation drowned out the worries. His father asked Zach questions about his games, and his mother discussed the details of the upcoming celebration with Amber. Zach noticed that the bride perked up in front of her parents, trying to appear carefree, but he also caught the look she gave TJ when the conversation turned to the guests. "Is TJ definitely coming?" Mrs. Holland asked, listing the invitees. "Yeah, sure," Amber said, looking at Zach. "He promised to be there." "Excellent," the mother smiled. "How could we do without the groom's best friend?" Zach smiled, feeling warm at the thought of TJ being there for the big day. He even considered asking his friend to be his best man, but he wanted to discuss it in person. TJ stayed in Milton after graduation, working as an assistant coach for the school baseball team to stay involved in sports and waiting for another chance to make it to the professional league. Zach respected his persistence. His friend never lost hope. Zach was only upset that his own workload did not allow him to communicate often. They wrote to each other from time to time, but they had not managed to see each other since graduation. "I'd like to stop by his place tomorrow," Zach said, putting his fork down. "I'll surprise him." "I think he'll be pleased," Amber said quietly and began to cut the pie with concentration. Zach didn't pay attention to her tone. He was too absorbed in the anticipation of meeting his friend. However, the next day TJ was not at home. Zach dropped by to see him, but his friend's mother said that he was away with the school team until Sunday. Zach was upset, left a note for TJ with greetings, and returned to business. The 2 days of vacation flew by. Having said goodbye to his family and his beloved, Zach went back to his club, promising to come back just before the wedding in July. Amber was cheerful, although her eyes were moist again when they said goodbye. Zach joked that she was blowing her nose from his cologne and made her laugh until she smiled. It was hard for both of them to leave, but the finish line was visible ahead. A little more and the parting would end. Unfortunately, fate decreed otherwise. 3 days before the wedding, on a warm July evening, Zach was returning to Milton after another series of games. He had asked his coach for a few weeks off for the sake of marriage and was rushing home. His heart was skipping a beat in joyful excitement. Just a little more, and he would see Amber in a wedding dress, and they would finally become husband and wife. But when he pulled up to the bride's house, Zach immediately sensed something was wrong. The porch was missing the decorations he knew Amber would have put up for the celebration. The windows of the house looked dark. Zach knocked on the door, but no one answered. He called Amber, but the phone didn't answer. Her parents weren't home either because the door was locked. A strange uneasiness gripped Zach. He rushed to the car and raced to his parents' house, thinking that perhaps Amber and his mother were in the garden busy with flowers for the ceremony. But she wasn't there either. His mother met him at the door, surprised. "Zach, you were supposed to come tomorrow. What happened?" "Amber's not answering. She's not home," he blurted out, jumping up the steps 2 at a time. "Have you seen her?" The mother's face lengthened. "I haven't seen her today. She came by yesterday and brought some little things for the wedding. She seemed quiet, but I thought she was tired." Zach felt his fingertips grow cold. Their house is locked. Where are Mr. and Mrs. Stewart? Amber's parents went to visit her aunt in Massachusetts for 2 days yesterday. Wait, her mother turned pale. You mean Amber is missing? I don't know, Zach's voice broke. The phone is off. She's nowhere to be found. He rushed into the living room, frantically dialing TJ's number, suddenly remembering his friend. He was supposed to be arriving. The beeps went on and on. No one answered. Zach threw the phone on the couch. Damn, what's going on? The mother approached cautiously, some envelope trembling in her hands. Zach, this seems to be for you. He glanced at her. She was holding a wedding invitation, one of the ones Amber had sent out. But on top of the card was his address, handwritten. Zach snatched the envelope, his heart pounding. Inside was a folded piece of paper, covered in Amber's neat handwriting. He recognized it immediately from reading her letters and notes so many times. It's her. He whispered and unfolded the letter. The lines swam before his eyes, and it took an effort to concentrate. Dear Zach, I don't know how to find the words. I'm a coward and an egoist that I write a letter instead of talking. Forgive me. I can't marry you. Not now, not later, never. I'm sorry. I tried to run away from this feeling, but I can't lie to you or myself anymore. I fell in love with someone else. It's TJ. I don't know how it happened. I swear I didn't want to hurt you. You are the kindest and most wonderful person I've ever known. But the heart can't be controlled. Ty and I, we didn't want it, it just happened. I tried for a long time to convince myself that it was just a hobby, that it would pass, but the closer the wedding got, the more clearly I understood. I can't tie my life to you, loving him. I dread to think how much pain this will cause you to read. I almost hate myself now, but it would be even worse if I married you and continued to deceive you and myself. You don't deserve that. We're leaving. Please don't look for us. It's better this way. It's better to end it all right away. I hope that someday you'll be able to forgive me. Thank you for all the years we were together. You made me happy, really, and I'm sorry that I ended up causing so much pain. TJ is also burning with shame and guilt. We both know how mean we are, but it can't be any other way. I love him, and he loves me. We just want to be together. I wish you happiness with all my heart, Zach. You deserve it more than anyone. Please take care of yourself and forgive. Amber. Zach's hands began to shake along with the paper. He reread the lines over and over again, which he couldn't wrap his head around. Fell in love with someone else. TJ, we're leaving. Don't look for us. The pain slowly, like an icy knife, entered his chest. He didn't notice that his mother was trying to say something, that she was carefully touching his shoulder. Only these words were in front of his eyes. No. He finally whispered in a hoarse voice. No, this is a joke. He glanced at his mother as if seeking confirmation that the letter was a hoax. But her gaze was filled with overwhelming sympathy and horror. Zach staggered. Zach, honey, sit down. Mary Holland tried to lead her son to the sofa, but he broke free, clutching the letter with a trembling hand. This is nonsense. They couldn't. No. His heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was going to jump out. Zach sucked in a breath, feeling panic creeping up on him. He grabbed the phone again and dialed TJ's number with trembling fingers. This time there was no dial tone. The subscriber has disconnected. He tried Amber's number and she was unavailable. Shit, he threw the phone at the wall. It hit the wall and landed with a thud on the carpet, its back panel shattering. His mother gasped, but Zach ignored it. The room echoed with his own scream. He sank heavily onto the couch, his head in his hands. Reality crashed in like a landslide. Picture after picture flashed before his mind's eye. Amber and TJ together in his absence, their furtive glances, her fatigue and tears. I fell in love with someone else. TJ, his best friend. Pain mixed with rage. Zach jumped up, feeling like he was suffocating. He needed to get out, run, anywhere, just away from this house where everything reminded him of them. Zach, came his mother's worried voice as he rushed to the door. He didn't hear. He ran out into the street and jumped into his car. The engine roared and Zach sped away, not paying attention to the road. Tears burned his eyes, but he was angry at himself for them. "Don't you dare cry like a brat," he ordered himself through clenched teeth. But something in his chest seemed to have burst, and the tears flowed involuntarily. Dusk was falling on the quiet streets of Milton as Zach drove aimlessly, the rush of blood in his ears and his vision blurring. He finally stopped the car on the outskirts of town, where an abandoned field began that had once been the local practice field. It was where he and TJ had practiced serving as kids, where he had first kissed Amber all those years ago. Everything in this town bore their mark. Zach jumped out of the car and stumbled forward through the tall grass. Abandoned throwing machines rusted in the shadow of an old shed. He stopped in the middle of the field, covering his face with his hands. A primal groan rose in his chest. He tried to hold it in, but he couldn't. His scream echoed across the wasteland full of pain, anger, despair. Zach screamed until he had enough breath, then fell to his knees and punched the wet ground. The physical pain was nothing compared to what was tearing him apart from the inside. Betrayal. Amber is his love, his almost wife. TJ is a friend he trusted like a brother. And then, in an instant, they are gone. They are together. Somewhere far away, they loved each other behind his back. A new wave of pressure hit his chest. Zach sank down onto the grass and covered his face with his hands. Tears streamed down his cheeks, falling to the ground. He sobbed silently, bitterly, like the cries of growing boys who have lost their faith. All the dreams they had raised together were shattered in an instant. How much time had passed, he didn't know. The sky had completely darkened when Zach slowly rose to his feet. Covered in dirt and tears, he walked back to the car, feeling empty. The tears had dried up, leaving only a dull ache under his ribs. He didn't go to his parents' house or home. Instead, he headed to the only place where he could still be himself, the school baseball field. The field was empty in the summer. The stands were dark holes. Zach walked to the bench and sat down, leaning his back against the cold boards. Here, on this very field, he and TJ had won the championship. Amber screamed at them from the stands, the happiest days. A piece of paper crackled in his shirt pocket, a letter he had mechanically taken with him. With trembling hands, Zach pulled it out and, without looking, tore it into shreds. The white scraps fell on the dusty floor at his feet. He did not want to remember what was written, but he could never forget it. Night fell over Milton. Zach sat in silence, staring blankly into the darkness of the field. There was nothing ahead, no wedding, no future as he had imagined it. Only a vast emptiness and an endless question. Why? There was no answer. Only the sounds of the July night and the distant chirping of crickets. Something broke inside Zach Holland that night. Broken and strengthened at the same time. He swore to himself that he would not break. He would go out there again, no matter how much it hurt, and throw that ball like nothing had happened. The world might be crumbling, but baseball would still keep him going. And so he did. The following months became the hardest test of his life for Zach. After that nightmarish July night, he seemed to have turned into a ghost of himself. At first, he avoided any conversations. He did not respond to sympathetic messages from friends and acquaintances, and ignored his mother's attempts to have a heart-to-heart talk. He thanked fate for only one thing, that the story did not reach the general public, and remained only a subject of whispers in his hometown. The team where he played knew only that the wedding was canceled due to family circumstances. No one bothered to ask questions, and the team itself was thousands of miles from Milton. Just a couple of days after the supposed wedding, Zach flew back to his club. The farm team coach, having learned about what had happened, Zach dryly informed him that the engagement was broken, offered him another week off. But Zach refused. He wanted only one thing: to go out on the mound again. Only there, standing on the mound with the ball in his hand, did he forget about the pain. Every practice, every game became salvation for him. In August, a few weeks after the breakup, Zach had his best game of the season. He went all 9 innings by himself, throwing a record number of strikeouts. After the final out, The team huddled around him, congratulating him on his brilliant performance. Zach tried to smile along with everyone else, but inside he felt only a scorched emptiness. That evening, when the guys invited him to celebrate the shout-out at a bar, he declined, citing fatigue. In fact, he simply could not stand other people's joy and company. Instead, Zach went back to an empty motel room and stared at the ceiling for a long time, mentally replaying every pitch he threw, just to keep his mind off of everything else. And so the rest of the season went. Zach played as consistently as ever. His numbers skyrocketed. The joke in the locker room was that Holland had found the secret to perfect serve control. No one knew the real reason for his focus, and Zach kept quiet. He pulled his pain with muscle tension and concentration on the game. In the fall, he was invited to work out with the Yankees' main roster. The young pitcher was noticed. In September, when the main club expanded its roster, Zach was included in the roster for several weeks. He did not take the field in MLB games then, sitting on the bench, but the very fact of being among the Yankees stars in the legendary Yankee Stadium was stunning. At another time, he would have been in seventh heaven, calling everyone he knew. Now, however, he perceived it as part of the job and only dryly called his parents, telling them the news. For the winter, he was sent back to the training center. There, far from home, among dozens of other young players, he spent several months almost without getting close to anyone. Most of the guys lived for baseball, but in the evenings they talked about their families, girls, and holiday plans. Zach kept to himself. When invited to go somewhere, he found a reason to refuse. From the outside, it might seem that he was simply too focused on the sport or arrogant. However, the coach, an attentive older man, once caught Zach after practice. "Son, you play great, but you can't be alone all the time. You'll get cold feet on yourself." Zach shrugged. "It's all right, coach." He wanted to add something else, but only sighed and patted the guy on the shoulder. "Okay, but if anything happens, my office is open." Zach thanked her politely, but didn't go anywhere. He wasn't about to spill his guts, especially to a pitching coach. And what would it change? You can't bring Amber back. You can't fix the past. Time passed. Little by little, the pain dulled, went deep inside, where it could be kept under lock and key. On the outside, Zach seemed calm, even cold, to those around him. He did his job, and did it well. The following season, he was transferred to an A-Lay team, the last step before MLB. There, despite stronger competition, he quickly became one of the best pitchers in the rotation. Local journalists interviewed him after particularly successful games, but Zach answered briefly, without unnecessary emotion. He was not looking for popularity, he was only interested in the game. 2 years after the breakup in the fall, what he had been waiting for since the draft finally happened. The Yankees' main roster lost a pitcher with an elbow injury, and the coaches decided to give the young guys a chance. Zach Holland was called up to New York and signed a permanent contract. He made his MLB debut on September 7th, coming out as a reliever in the 7th inning against the Toronto Blue Jays. The scoreboard showed the Yankees down 2-5. The rookie was tasked with holding the opponent. Zach exhaled and threw the first pitch to the enthusiastic roar of the crowd of thousands. The ball whistled into the catcher's glove, a strike. His legs were shaking slightly from excitement, but he quickly pulled himself together. The Blue Jays batters couldn't do anything against him. Zach had 3 men in a row in that inning, not allowing anyone to get on base. When the umpire called the third out, the stadium erupted in applause. Holland came down the mound, and his teammates greeted him with approving slaps on the back. He had done his job perfectly. That night, the Yankees came back in the 9th and even won, although Zach was already watching the end from the bench. After the game, reporters asked the young pitcher to talk about his impressions of the debut. Zach answered something about glad to be part of the team and just doing what I can do. Inside, he was not filled with jubilant happiness, as he once expected. It was an important step, yes. He was pleased that he did it. But there was no euphoria. He couldn't fall asleep for a long time in the hotel room. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, and wondered what he would feel now if everything hadn't gone downhill. he would probably have dialed Amber's number first, excitedly sharing his joy. She would have been screaming with happiness into the phone, perhaps already rushing to buy a ticket to come to his first game. But there was no one to share with except his parents, and he called them during the day more out of duty. Zach rolled over, staring at the dim strip of light beneath the door. He had long since pushed thoughts of Amber away, but today, in the silence after such a momentous event, they crept out. He imagined her for a second what she had been like when she was happy for him. No, he sat up abruptly, turned on the light. Time for bed. Tomorrow was a new game. He needed to think about the future. So he began his career in the major leagues alone, with a cold determination to move forward. Year after year, his results grew. Zach became a fixture in the Yankees lineup, a key player in the pitching rotation. His fastball gained speed, his curvy balls confused the league's best hitters. His name appeared in the news more and more often. Cold Holland, that's what some commentators dubbed him for his calmness on the field and his lack of emotion. Off the field, he remained an enigma. His teammates respected him, he never let them down, always conducted himself professionally. But he didn't make any close friends in the team. Zach communicated only as much as the game required. Jokes in the locker room, team dinners, he was there, smiling, but keeping his distance. If someone tried to ask about something personal, he would change the subject or joke around. Over time, those around him simply accepted it. Well, he's a reserved guy, sometimes. The main thing is that he plays brilliantly. His personal life also seemed to be on hold. At least, Zach wasn't looking for a serious relationship. There were fleeting infatuations. Once a teammate's sister tried to date him. They went out to dinner a couple of times, but things didn't go any further. Another time, a pretty girl caught him after a match for an autograph, left her number he called out of politeness, but on the second date he realized that he didn't feel anything and broke it off. It was as if his heart had closed tightly after the betrayal, and Zach was in no hurry to let anyone in again. Several years passed. He turned 27, then 28. He was in the prime of his career. At 28, he made his first All-Star game and pitched 2 perfect innings, astonishing many with his technique. That same year, the Yankees reached the playoffs, and although they were eliminated in the first round, Holland was remembered by the public as one of the most resilient players. But even on the days when the stadium chanted his name, when reporters vied with each other to ask for an interview, inside he was quiet. The joy was muted, the sadness too. Life flowed according to the schedule of games, road trips, and short off-season breaks. He rarely came to Milton. At first, he was hesitant to show up at home. The shame of the broken wedding was too fresh, and he didn't want to hear about Amber or TJ by chance. Then, over the years, he gradually began visiting his parents for Christmas and Thanksgiving. In his hometown, he was considered a local celebrity. Newspaper articles proudly called him our Zach Holland MLB star. But he rarely interacted with his former acquaintances. Milton reminded him of too many things. And yet time had done its job. As he approached 30, Zach was surprised to realize that he could think about the past with almost no pain, as if it were someone else's life. Yes, there were scars deep inside. He had never fully learned to trust people, but at least Ember's ghost had stopped appearing in his dreams every night, as it had in the first year. He simply lived as best he could and thought that perhaps it would always be like this. Around 30 years of age, fate finally gave Zach a surprise that he had never expected. It happened in the fall, right after the end of another season. The Yankees were eliminated from the playoffs, and the team went their separate ways. Some went home to their families, some went on vacation. Zach decided to stay in New York for a couple of weeks. He needed to sort out some housing and bank issues. One night, a teammate, a catcher named Miguel, invited Zach to a house party. Miguel was celebrating his wedding anniversary and had invited several of his friends and their wives. Zach usually avoided such gatherings, feeling uncomfortable around married couples. But Miguel insisted. "Bro, stop hanging around alone. Come, let's relax, have a drink. There will be good people." On the day of the party, Zach was still hesitant, but at the last minute he decided, why not? He realized that he couldn't remember the last time he went out for something other than business, just to socialize. He arrived at Miguel's house on the outskirts of town with a bottle of good wine as a gift. A group of about 10 people had already gathered in the living room. Joyful greetings began. "Oh, here's Zach. Come on in." Miguel immediately sat him down on the sofa, handing him a glass of punch. Miguel's wife, Carla, introduced the guests to each other. "And this is Lauren, my friend," she said, leading a slender woman of about 30 to Zach. The woman had dark blonde hair pulled back into a loose bun and calm gray-green eyes. She looked elegant in a simple dark blue blouse and jeans, without any unnecessary jewelry, just a watch on her wrist. "Lauren Pierce," she said, extending her hand. Her handshake was confident, like someone accustomed to business acquaintances. "And you must be Zach." "Yes, Zach Holland," he nodded, slightly surprised that she had said his name first. Carla smiled. "Lauren was just asking who this mysterious friend of Miguel's was. I told her you were a baseball player." "Oh, I see," Zach nodded, feeling the usual awkwardness for a moment. Not everyone outside the sports circle understood the players' lives. "I hope I'm not completely mysterious." Lauren smiled at the corners of her lips. "It's just that Carla speaks well of you, and I got curious. I don't follow baseball very much, I admit, so please forgive my ignorance." There was no coquetry or special respect in her tone, rather a calm politeness with a touch of light irony towards herself. Zach liked it. "It's okay," he responded, gesturing for her to sit down next to him on the sofa. "I, for my part, am not strong in jurisprudence, if by any chance you are a lawyer." Lauren raised her eyebrows slightly. "Right on target. Where did you get the idea?" "Intuition," Zach smiled. "Carla mentioned that her friend works at a law firm." "That's right," Lauren nodded. "I work in a law firm in Manhattan. It's probably not an easy job." "It varies." She took a sip of punch from her glass. "But I like it. And your job, or rather, your game, is more of a lifestyle, right? Constant travel, training." Zach shrugged. "You get used to it. It's been a routine for me for a long time." "Then you're lucky," she noted. "Not everyone manages to turn a childhood hobby into a profession." "Yes, I was lucky in that," he agreed. Miguel turned on the music, the room began to buzz, and several couples began to dance. The atmosphere was warming up. Zach felt surprisingly at ease with Lauren. The conversation flowed freely. They discussed New York, how he, being a provincial, was getting used to the metropolis, and Lauren, on the contrary, having grown up in the suburbs of Boston, had settled into New York after college. It turned out that she was a couple of years younger than him, having recently turned 27. "So you're from Boston?" Zach asked with interest. "Everyone there is a Red Sox fan. Won't your friends beat you up for knowing the Yankees?" Lauren laughed. "A little. My father still teases me that I've gone over to the enemy camp. But it's okay, we're not too fanatical about baseball in our family. Lucky. My grandfather was a huge Yankees fan. I think he's the happiest of all that I play for them." "Oh, then you have a hereditary love for the team." "Great." They drank punch and laughed. Zach was surprised to find himself genuinely smiling. Lauren was an easy person to be around. She listened attentively, spoke wittily, but without trying to seem like someone else. As the music slowed, Carla and another woman began to pull the men to dance. Miguel was already twirling his wife around the small space between the coffee table and the sofa. Lauren watched the dancing couples with a small smile. Zach suddenly felt a rush. "Would you like to join in?" he asked, leaning slightly toward her, over the noise of the music. She looked at him in surprise. "Dance? I warn you, I'm not a good partner." "Me too," Zach admitted, "but we can try to pretend we can." Lauren chuckled. "Why not?" He stood up and extended his hand to her. She placed hers in his, and they headed toward the makeshift dance floor. The music wasn't too loud, a romantic 80s ballad. Zach carefully placed his hand on Lauren's waist, feeling his own heart pounding. He hadn't slow danced. He couldn't even remember the last time. Probably with Amber, he cut the thought off immediately. Now was not the time to remember. "Are you okay?" Lauren asked quietly, noticing his distraction. "Yes, sorry. I just haven't done it in a while," Zach answered honestly. "Then I appreciate your courage," she smiled. They moved slowly to the music. Zach noted that he felt comfortable. Her height was just below his shoulder, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. The scent of her perfume, something fresh, with a hint of citrus, was barely noticeable with each step. "Does Miguel often drag you to events like this?" Lauren asked quietly. "Rarely," he admitted. "Usually I find a reason to refuse." "Why? Don't you like company?" "I used to, I guess. I just wasn't used to it. I've been too focused on my career these last few years," Zach answered, choosing his words carefully. Lauren nodded understandingly, but said nothing. For a minute, they just danced in silence. Zach suddenly felt good, so simple and calm as he hadn't felt in a long time. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed that Miguel and his wife exchanged meaningful smiles, looking at them. Zach was embarrassed and removed his hand from Lauren's waist, stopping. "Maybe we should go back. We were mistaken for the main dancers of the evening." Lauren followed his gaze and snorted cheerfully. "Oh, these married men. Let's sit down." They returned to the couch. Zach felt a little embarrassed. Had he gone too far with the dance? But Lauren looked quite pleased, her eyes sparkling with laughter. "Thank you, I haven't danced for a long time. It turned out to be even pleasant." "I'm glad to hear it," he responded. "You never know, maybe I stepped on it a couple of times." "It's nothing," she waved it off. "I've been through worse. My heel was broken at graduation." Zach burst out laughing at the picture. The evening was drawing to a close, and the guests were beginning to leave. While Miguel was saying goodbye to one couple at the door, Zach and Lauren exchanged phone numbers. "I'd love to grab coffee sometime," Lauren said, tucking her phone into her purse. "Now that you're free from gaming." "I'd love to," Zach replied, trying not to show how excited he was. "I'll be in town for a couple more weeks before heading off to preseason camp." "Great. Then we'll call each other and agree on a time." She kissed him lightly on the cheek as she said goodbye, a gesture she apparently used to with friends. But for Zach, it was something unexpected. He froze for a moment and then smiled. "See you later, Lauren." "See you later, Zach," she repeated softly and headed for the exit. As soon as the door closed behind her, Miguel and Carla immediately pounced on Zach with friendly teasing. "So, how do you like Lauren?" Carla beamed with joy. "I knew you would get along." "She's wonderful," Zach admitted, unable to hide his smile. "She liked you too, bro," Miguel winked. "Come on, don't miss this moment." Zach shook his head, trying to calm his racing heart. He felt like a schoolboy after a first date, even though it wasn't really a date, just an evening out with the same group. But Lauren Pierce had awakened something important in him. He wanted to call someone again, just to hear their voice, to share news with her. On the way home, sitting in a taxi and looking out the window at the lights of New York at night, Zach found himself humming the melody of the ballad they had danced to. He even laughed, amazed. It seemed like the ice inside him had cracked slightly. For the first time in a long time, he was looking forward to tomorrow with impatience to write to Lauren, arrange a meeting, and get to know her better. Zach and Lauren began seeing each other regularly. First, there was the promised coffee, a modest meeting in a quiet cafe not far from her office building. They talked for 2 hours, not noticing how time flew by, discussing new films, sharing funny stories from work. Lauren told the story of how she once mixed up the courtrooms and burst into the wrong hearing with a fiery speech, which made the judge laugh until tears. Zach, laughing, responded with a story about how, as a rookie, he accidentally went out to bat with someone else's bat because he took the wrong equipment in the locker room. After coffee, there were dinners, walks around Manhattan, a visit to the Museum of Modern Art. Lauren turned out to be an art fan, and Zach was happy to keep her company, although he understood little about the exhibits. With each meeting, they got to know each other better. Zach discovered that Lauren was a very sensitive and reliable person. She knew how to listen, never interrupted or asked questions if he was not inclined to talk. She also had an amazing sense of humor. She could joke with a serious expression so that Zach choked with laughter. His soul was gradually thawing. After a couple of weeks, he couldn't imagine a day without a quick text to Lauren in the morning or a call in the evening. His team, meanwhile, was out of town, training in Florida, where Zach had to go later because of his participation in the club's advertising campaign. This gave him the opportunity to spend more time with Lauren in New York at the beginning of the spring. One day, while driving Lauren home from dinner, Zach stopped at the threshold of her apartment. Usually, they parted with a light kiss on the cheek, but that evening there was a tense anticipation in the air. Lauren looked up at him from below, the key in her hand shaking. "I'm glad we met," she said quietly. Zach felt his heart pounding. He raised his hand and hesitantly touched her cheek. "Can I?" Lauren didn't let him finish. She reached out and touched his lips with hers. The kiss was careful, warm. Zach closed his eyes and responded, feeling a wave of long-forgotten sensations rolling in. Her lips were soft and so familiar, as if he had kissed them 1,000 times already. When they pulled away, Lauren blushed slightly. "Sorry, if I was hasty." "No," he whispered, smiling. "Everything is right." They didn't say goodbye right away. Zach stood there for another 10 minutes, hugging her by the door. They whispered about something and laughed quietly. That night, he returned to his place absolutely happy and couldn't fall asleep for a long time because of the overwhelming emotions. So their relationship grew into something more than just friendship. They became a couple, although they did not utter loud words. Everything was clear anyway. They were drawn to each other, sought out meetings, missed each other when they were apart. In the spring, Zach left for a few weeks for training camp and friendly games. Lauren was swamped with work, a big deal she was preparing for. They called each other every night. Often the conversations would drag on late into the night, and Zach would find himself chatting with her about everything under the sun, like a teenager with his first love. He liked it, and it scared him at the same time. The affection grew rapidly, and along with it, somewhere deep inside, there was a fear stirring. The same fear that had once scorched him. When the season began and Zach returned to New York in April, he and Lauren became virtually inseparable. She attended his first game, sitting quietly in the stands among the regular fans, without any fanfare. Zach was nervous when he found her looking at him before the game. It felt like time had rewinded, and once again someone dear to him was sitting there, rooting for him. His hand shook as he threw the first pitch. But then he forced the ghosts of the past aside and played brilliantly. The Yankees won, and Zach had 10 strikeouts. After the game, he came out of the locker room, already dressed, and found Lauren in the guest lounge. She was talking to one of the players' wives, whom she knew through Carla. When Lauren saw Zach, she smiled so brightly that his heart skipped a beat. He stepped toward her. "Well, how was it? Wasn't it boring?" "Boring," she laughed. "You played amazingly. That was exciting, even for me. I think I'm starting to understand baseball." Zach felt proud, like a boy who had received praise. "Glad to hear it. Thank you for coming." He restrained himself from hugging her in public. After all, people around them were looking askance at them. Instead, he suggested, "Shall we go? I'll take you." In the car on the way home, they discussed the game, joking and teasing each other. Lauren teased that she had worried for nothing. Cold Holland really was cold-blooded, since after a few unsuccessful serves, he pulled himself together and beat everyone. Zach was surprised. "Wait, how do you know my nickname?" "Well, I read articles about you before the game," she admitted. "I thought maybe I should prepare." "I see," he drawled, feeling a warm wave inside. The fact that she was interested in his world pleased him to the depths of his soul. "And how do you like this image cold?" Lauren shook her head. "I don't know, on the field it might be cold, but in real life I wouldn't say so." Zach smiled and gently took her hand where it lay on the armrest between the seats. She laced her fingers through his. They rode the rest of the way in silence, understanding each other without words. Several months passed. Their relationship only grew stronger. Zach introduced Lauren to his parents when they came to New York for a game in the summer. Mary Holland hugged her son and whispered in his ear that she hadn't seen him so happy in a long time. Her father shook Lauren's hand and immediately started talking to her about her work, and, as he later admitted to Zach, was captivated by her intelligence and tact. Lauren gradually introduced Zach into her life, too. He met her brother, a cheerful programmer, and her parents, who had traveled from Massachusetts specifically to meet their daughter's boyfriend. Zach felt surprisingly comfortable in her family circle. Lauren's parents turned out to be simple, friendly people, without unnecessary questions about his athletic fame. Everything seemed to be going perfectly, and yet, every now and then, Zach felt a tinge of unease. He noticed that he sometimes caught himself being wary when it came to serious steps, like when Lauren casually mentioned that her friend was getting married and sighed dreamily, looking at her friend's ring. Zach just smiled and said nothing. A painful lump stirred in his soul. The word marriage still got on his nerves. Lauren didn't ask anything then, but a little later, alone, she calmly said, "Zach, if I ever bring up the subject of marriage, you won't run away in a panic, will you?" He was taken aback, feeling his heart stop. "What? No, I just noticed you tensed up when I talked about my friend." She looked him in the eye. "You know you can tell me if something's bothering you." His throat was dry. This was the moment he had been dreading and yet knew would come sooner or later. Lauren had been waiting for him to open up, but he had kept putting it off, never telling her about that old wound. Zach looked away. "Sorry, you're right, I was tense. It's hard to explain." Lauren touched his hand gently. "We're doing well, right? I didn't ruin anything with this conversation." "No, of course not," Zach said quickly, taking her hand in his. "We're fine. It's me, as usual." He tried to smile, but he felt he couldn't turn it into a joke. The weight in his chest was growing. Lauren was silent, giving him time to collect his thoughts. They were at his house, in the living room. The TV was playing some news on mute. Zach stood up, turned off the screen, and turned to Lauren. She was sitting on the couch, frowning slightly with worry. "Lauren," he began quietly, "I have something to tell you. A long time ago, I almost had a wedding." He saw Lauren's eyebrows rise in surprise, but she remained silent, waiting for him to continue. Zach felt his knees shaking. He sat down next to her, steepling his fingers. It was harder than he thought, voicing what he had kept bottled up for so many years. "It was right after college," he continued, looking at the floor. "My fiancée, her name was Amber. We grew up together, and my best friend, TJ, they—" His voice broke, and Lauren gently placed her hand on his back, stroking it as if supporting it. Zach squeezed his hands tighter, feeling hot shame at his weakness. "A few days before the wedding, they ran away together." Lauren gasped softly and covered her mouth with her hand. "My God." "Yes," Zach chuckled hoarsely, finally daring to look her in the eye. "Then my world collapsed. The closest person and best friend, they disappeared in an instant. Together." Tears welled up in his throat, unexpectedly, as if it had happened yesterday. He blinked away the moisture. "I'm sorry." He breathed out, pausing. "I didn't mean to be dramatic. It's just, you need to know." "Darling." Lauren called him that for the first time, hugging him with both arms. "How much pain it must have been for you." Zach closed his eyes, feeling her warmth envelop him. He smiled weakly. "So many years have passed. I thought I had coped. Well, I did, of course, but the scar remains." She pulled back just enough to see his face. "Now it's clear where this wariness comes from." Zach nodded. "I was really afraid that I wouldn't be able to trust like that again, to love." Lauren ran her fingers gently down his cheek. But he could. He held her hand near his face and pressed his cheek to her palm. "I love you," he said quietly, feeling a heavy burden fall from his soul with these words. Lauren's eyes lit up and a smile blossomed on her face. "I love you too, Zach." He leaned down and kissed her, no longer holding back the emotions that had surged through him. The kiss was salty from his tears he hadn't even noticed when they started to flow. Lauren gently wiped them away with her fingertips, whispering, "Everything is fine. I'm not going anywhere." Zach held her tightly against him, burying his face in her shoulder. He knew the past would never go away, but now he had a present and a future with this woman who knew his pain and accepted him for who he was. That evening they talked for a long time. Without tears, Lauren asked questions carefully. He told as much as he could, without giving unnecessary details. She did not judge anyone. She only repeated how strong he was, since he had gone through such a thing. At night, falling asleep next to her, Zach felt incredibly light, as if he had thrown off a long-standing weight from his soul. From now on, there were no secrets between them. He knew. He trusted Lauren Pierce completely, as he had not trusted anyone since childhood, and this trust was mutual and strong as a rock. After that heart-to-heart talk, Zach and Lauren became even closer. The pain of the past no longer hung like a shadow. On the contrary, it connected them more tightly, turning them into understanding and support. As the months passed, Zach felt that he had finally found true family happiness, even though they were not yet formally married. Deep down, he already knew. Lauren was his destiny, the very woman with whom he wanted to spend his whole life. The idea of marriage was no longer unthinkable. One fall, after they had been dating for 2 years, Zach began to seriously consider proposing. He was 30, and he felt ready. This time, he was truly ready without looking back. He shared his thoughts with his mother, calling her late one evening after the game. "Mom, I want to ask Lauren to marry me." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds, and then Mary Holland clapped her hands so joyfully that Zach even heard a pop over the phone. "Son, this is wonderful. She will say yes, I'm sure." "I hope so," Zach smiled, a little nervously. "I've been thinking about how to make it special for her." His mother began to offer ideas, from a candlelit dinner to an unexpected flash mob involving the team. Zach rejected the latter immediately. Lauren did not like excessive showiness. In the end, he settled on a quiet, homey option, one where their feelings would be only theirs, without prying eyes. Zach started by talking to Lauren's father, asking for his blessing in the old tradition. It was touchingly awkward. Lauren's father just laughed into the phone. "Boy, we're all for it. Take care of our girl and marry her even tomorrow. We'll be only too happy." Having received support from his future relatives, Zach secretly bought a ring. He remembered how he chose a ring for Amber many years ago when he was younger and poorer. He allowed himself a simple option. Now he could buy a beautiful ring with platinum and a scattering of small stones around the main diamond without embarrassment. But the main thing, of course, is not the price he chose with his heart, imagining what Lauren would like. The right moment came in December. They were planning to spend the Christmas holidays together, first visiting her parents in Boston, then returning to New York to visit his parents. Before the trip to Boston, Zach decided to make his plan come true. He prepared dinner at his home. He cooked pasta himself, using her favorite recipe, which he secretly learned from Carla. He turned on soft jazz music, decorated the living room with a garland of lights. The approach of Christmas was telling. Lauren arrived, as usual, with her friendly smile and a bottle of wine. "How beautiful you are," she noted, taking off her coat. "In a festive mood?" "I try," Zach jokes, taking her coat and secretly worrying whether his eyes were betraying the tension. They chatted about trivialities and laughed at dinner. Zach waited for the right moment, but inside he was cold with nerves. Right now, over dessert, or maybe later, under the tree. No, he couldn't wait, or he'd go crazy. As they moved to the couch with glasses of wine, Zach knew it was time. His heart was pounding in his chest. He put his glass down and turned to Lauren, who, noticing the change in his expression, tilted her head. "What's happened?" "Everything is fine. Or rather," he tried to smile, "it will happen now." Lauren raised an eyebrow in confusion, but remained silent, watching. Zach stood up. He felt his knees tremble treacherously, but he still dropped to one knee in front of her. Lauren's eyes widened in guessing, her hand pressed to her mouth. "Lauren," Zach began hoarsely, "you know how much you mean to me. You changed my life, gave me back my faith in myself and in love. I can't imagine a day without you." He took a small velvet case from his pocket and opened it, revealing a shimmering ring. "Darling, will you marry me?" His breath caught in his throat as he waited. For a split second, Lauren's face froze in shock, but then she nodded quickly, a smile spreading across her face, though her lips trembled. "Yes, yes, of course." Zach let out a sigh of relief, smiling so widely his cheeks hurt. Lauren rushed to him, forcing him to stand up, and hugged him tightly. "Oh, Zach," was all she kept repeating through her laughter and tears. He, laughing, also felt the moisture in his eyes. With trembling fingers, he took her left hand and put the ring on her ring finger. The ring fit perfectly. How beautiful. Lauren admired, examining the decoration, but immediately switched to him. "You are so wonderful. I am so happy." "Me too," he answered hoarsely, pulling her into a kiss. So Zach Holland found a bride for the second time in his life, but the feeling was completely different. Not the euphoric whirlwind of youth, but the deep, quiet happiness of an adult who knows exactly what he wants. The following weeks were a joyful bustle. Lauren and Zach decided to keep the ceremony short. They chose a date in the off-season in November of the following year so that their game schedule wouldn't interfere. Both parents helped with the organization. This time, Zach was very involved. Not leaving everything to his bride, he wanted Lauren to feel his support every step of the way. They didn't just choose a town hall or a hall as a wedding venue, they liked a cozy old New England manor house, converted into a guest house with a spacious lawn. The autumn colors were supposed to create the perfect backdrop for the celebration. Lauren dreamed of an outdoor ceremony, weather permitting. Sometimes Zach caught himself in déjà vu, discussing the guest list, the invitations, the menu. He had experienced all of this before. But every time the anxiety attacks appeared, Lauren seemed to read his thoughts. She would hug him or lighten the mood with a joke or say, "Don't worry, I'm not running away." At first, these words rang painfully familiar, but gradually, repeated in a half-joking form, they turned into their little code. "I'm not running away, and you don't run away," she would say, kissing him when he suddenly fell silent in the middle of planning another point. And Zach would smile, answering, "I promise." Despite the smiles, nerves were still getting the better of them as the wedding approached. A week before the date, Zach couldn't sleep properly. His thoughts were swarming anxiously at night. Lauren was worried too, but she was more worried about the dress and the weather than about the fact of marriage itself. The wedding day finally arrived. The cold November air was crisp and clear. Fortunately, there was no sign of rain. Guests sat on white chairs set out on the lawn of the estate, covered with blankets. The autumn trees around them glowed red and gold as if on cue. Zach stood by the flower arch, waiting for the bride. He was wearing an elegant dark gray suit, the tie slightly pressing on his neck. His heart was beating like crazy. Miguel was shifting from foot to foot next to him. He had agreed to be the best man. It was Miguel who caught Zach's eye and gave him a thumbs up encouragingly. "Relax, buddy," he whispered. "It's going to be okay." Zach nodded, swallowing. He looked around. Their parents were sitting in the front rows. His mother was already getting out her handkerchief in advance. A little further, he noticed Carla and other friends. A red head flashed nearby. It was Jessica, TJ's sister, with whom they had crossed paths again recently. Zach flinched when he saw her, but Jessica smiled at him warmly. She remained his childhood friend, despite the breakup with her brother. Even then, after that story, she sent a letter of support. And recently, having learned about the upcoming wedding, she called and said warm words. Zach was glad that he did not push her away. Some threads with his old life could be saved. To the sound of the tuning fork, everyone stood up. The bride appeared. At first, Zach saw only a flash of a white dress between the trees. Then Lauren came out onto the path on her father's arm. He gasped to himself. She was the embodiment of beauty and harmony. a dress with long lace sleeves, a light veil, a smile shining on her face, eyes slightly moist with happiness. Lauren met his gaze, and Zach felt the excitement suddenly drain from him. He sat up straight, the corners of his lips lifting to meet hers. He found himself smiling at her, wide and open, without a trace of fear. As his father handed Lauren's hand over to him, Zach managed to whisper, "You came." Lauren laughed softly, answering so only he could hear. "Of course I came, silly." They turned to the master of ceremonies. He began to say the prescribed words about love and fidelity, but for Zach everything merged into a single warm noise. He looked only at Lauren. She, too, seemed to barely listen to the official speech. She was biting her lips slightly, holding back a happy smile. It was time for the vows. They decided to say their words. Lauren was the first to say that she was grateful for the chance to meet such a kind and strong man like Zach, that she would be there for them through thick and thin, to support them and love them. Her voice shook, and Zach felt his eyes sting. Then it was his turn to speak. He took a deep breath. "Lauren, the day I met you, I didn't know that my life would change forever. You taught me to trust again, to enjoy simple things again. You are my best friend, my support, and my love. I promise to be by your side always. I promise to protect you, respect you, and love you with all my heart for the rest of my life." His lips trembled as he spoke. There were tears in his voice, but he was not ashamed of them. Lauren wiped them away with a handkerchief, smiling broadly through them. When they exchanged rings and the long-awaited, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," was heard, Zach, without thinking, pulled his wife in and kissed her, barely holding himself back from spinning her around in the air. Somewhere, people were applauding. His mother was sobbing loudly, but all he could hear was the beating of her heart next to his. They walked down the aisle, showered with chrysanthemum petals, laughter ringing out. Zach looked ahead, holding Lauren's arm, and thought that now everything would definitely be okay. He had found the family he had dreamed of, and no ghosts of the past had power over him anymore. Married life turned out to be surprisingly natural and joyful for Zach. After their wedding, he and Lauren rented a spacious apartment on the Upper West Side, near a park, so they could have somewhere to walk on weekends. Zach continued to play for the Yankees. Lauren went to her law firm in the mornings. In the evenings, they cooked dinner together, chatted about the past day, or went to their favorite Italian restaurant on the corner. Sometimes Lauren worked late, and then Zach would meet her at the office and then walk a couple of blocks, enjoying a rare free moment together in the noisy city. They quickly got used to each other's lives. Lauren would jokingly grumble about the mess of sports gear that Zach would occasionally make, and he would tease her about her love of spreading dozens of folders with her tasks all over the living room. But these were all small things that only brightened their days. Every night, falling asleep, Zach thanked fate for the chance that had fallen to him. A year after their wedding, their happiness became even more complete. Lauren became pregnant. The news about the future baby caused a storm of emotions. Zach carried his wife in his arms, literally, lifting her up and spinning her around the room when the test showed the coveted stripes. Both were a little nervous, expecting changes, but were mostly happy. At the ultrasound, they were told it was a boy. Zach secretly cried when he saw the tiny heart on the monitor. Lauren squeezed his hand gently at that moment. They felt, "This is a real miracle." The pregnancy went without complications. Lauren tried to stay active until the very end, even sometimes appearing in the stands to support Zach, holding his noticeably rounded belly in her lap. Zach's team joked that the new fan was clearly bringing good luck. The season was going great. One day in June, a little ahead of schedule, Lauren called him before his morning workout. "I think it's time," she said excitedly. Zach almost dropped his phone. "Already? Hold on, I'm coming." The baby decided to come into the world quickly. Zach barely had time to rush to the maternity hospital before he was immediately handed a medical uniform and escorted to his wife. Lauren, pale but calm, smiled at the sight of him. "You made it." "Of course," he breathed out, squeezing her hand, although everything inside him was trembling. A few hours later, Their son announced himself with a loud cry as the midwife delivered him into the world. Zach, looking at the little wrinkled bundle, could not hold back his tears. He was offered to cut the umbilical cord his hands were shaking, but he managed. And when the baby was placed on Lauren's chest and she cried with happiness, Zach realized, there is no more beautiful moment on earth. "Hello, our boy," Lauren whispered to the baby, stroking his chubby cheek. Then she looked at her husband. "What should we name him?" They had discussed several names beforehand, but now for some reason one came to mind, the one Lauren had suggested a couple of weeks ago, lying in bed at night and feeling the baby's kicks. "Perhaps Oliver," she said then. "I like that name, it's kind." "Oliver," Zach repeated, gently touching his son's tiny fingers. "It looks like it fits him." So their son was named Oliver James Holland. Oliver because they liked it, and James in honor of Lauren's father. With the baby's arrival, life took on a new rhythm. The first few months were tough, lack of sleep, anxiety over every little thing. But Zach and Lauren supported each other. Zach, as much as the play schedule allowed, got up at night to change diapers, rocked his son to sleep, singing lullabies in a low voice, the repertoire of which mostly consisted of reworked baseball songs, which made Lauren snort cheerfully. On the field, Zach played just as confidently, although now he hurried home every free moment to spend with his family. His teammates joked, "Our Holland has become a real homebody," to which he only smiled. He was no longer drawn to the side. After the matches, he rushed to his wife and son. He liked coming home and hearing Lauren humming something to Oliver in a low voice behind the door, rocking him to sleep. He liked to lie down next to Lauren, who was already asleep, feeling the weight of her head on his shoulder and thinking that he did not need any other happiness. Meanwhile, his sports career was entering its golden period. Zach, at 32, was at the top of his form. He surpassed his personal records for strikeouts and was chosen Player of the Week more than once. The press wrote about the likelihood of him receiving the Cy Young Award at the end of the season. For the Yankees, this year was also going brilliantly. The team confidently went to victory in the division. Lauren would sometimes come to games with her son. The sight of Oliver's happy face as his mother put tiny headphones on him to block out the stadium noise inspired Zach to do great things. He joked that he would definitely throw a no-hitter for his son. In September, the Yankees officially made the playoffs. That evening, Zach returned home later than usual to attend a small celebration for the team and their families. Lauren stayed home with the baby, but had a late dinner ready for him. At the table, they raised glasses of cider. The wife was breastfeeding and temporarily abstaining from alcohol. "To victory," Lauren proclaimed cheerfully, clinking glasses with her husband. "We're so proud of you." Oliver shifted in his high chair and grunted at the sound of his mother's excited voice. Zach looked at the little one with a gentle smile. "And I am proud of our team of fans." "Now the fun begins, huh?" Lauren asked, reaching out and covering his hand with hers. "The playoffs." Zach nodded. "Yes, there are serious tests ahead. In the first round, we will most likely meet Toronto, and if we get through, the Red Sox may be waiting there." Lauren raised an eyebrow at the mention of the Boston team. She knew about the unwritten bitter rivalry between the Yankees and the Red Sox, but she thought her husband was lost in his own thoughts. "Is something wrong?" she asked softly. Zach sighed. "It's just, there's a chance that if we and the Red Sox win our series, we'll meet in the American League Finals, and there, as part of Boston." Lauren guessed. "TJ." Zach smiled weakly. "Yes, I saw the news he's been coming out in relives a lot this year. He's having a good season." Lauren leaned forward a little, looking into her husband's eyes. "How do you feel about this?" He shrugged, trying to speak calmly. "Honestly, I don't know. So many years have passed. Sometimes I feel like I don't care. I have my own life, he has his. But sometimes I catch myself wondering, what has he become? Is it stupid?" "No, it's not stupid." Lauren shook her head. "He was your friend." "He was," Zach repeated quietly, feeling the familiar sting. He looked at his son, who had grabbed the rattle with his little hand and was trying hard to pull it into his mouth. You know, I used to think, I wish I never had to see him again. But now, if I have to play against him, I think I can handle it. Like opponents on the field, nothing more. Lauren smiled a little sadly. Here is another test that you will go through, and I will be there rooting for you. Zach turned her hand and kissed the inside of her wrist. Thank you, darling. Deep down, he was truly calm. Life had taught him a bitter but important truth. Everything passes, including pain. Now he had everything he could dream of. And even meeting the ghost of the past should not disturb this. After a week of intense competition, the prediction became reality. The Yankees took the lead in the series against Toronto, and the Red Sox defeated their rival. Two legendary teams whose rivalry lasted for decades were to meet in the American League Championship Series. And for the first time, Zach Holland and TJ, former friends, now players of two sworn teams, were to meet on the field. The day before the series began, Zach was scrolling through sports news on his tablet. One interview caught his attention, a Red Sox manager confirming the pitching roster for the series. Among the relievers was T.J. Brown, a name he hadn't heard out loud in more than 8 years. Zach felt a strange calm. He said T.J. to himself, testing the name like a long-forgotten word. There was no pain, just a slight sadness and curiosity. That night, before bed, he went into the nursery as usual to check on Oliver. The baby was snoring quietly in his crib, hugging a teddy bear, a gift from Aunt Jessica. Zach adjusted the blanket on his son and suddenly thought, no matter what happens on the field, I have this a home, a family, love. He leaned down, touched his lips to the baby's soft hair and whispered, Wish Papa luck, Ollie. Oliver moved his fist weakly in his sleep, as if waving. Zach smiled and quietly walked out, heading off to rest before the big games. Ahead lay the main meeting with the past, and he was ready to face it. Yankee Stadium was packed and buzzing. It was the night of Game 7 of the series. The Yankees and Red Sox were tied 3-3, and today's game would determine who would go to the World Series. Tension hung in the chilly October air. Zach Holland warmed up on the mound before throwing the first pitch. The crowd was roaring, but he was trained by years to tune out the noise. His mind was clear and focused, hitting the ball, not the past. Somewhere out there, in the visitors' locker room, TJ was getting ready to take the field, but that was out of the question. The game was first. The first inning went smoothly for Zach. He quickly sent 3 Red Sox batters to the bench in a row, striking out twice. The crowd roared with delight. Zach, coming down the mound, caught the eye of Miguel, the catcher, who googled with joy and quietly blurted out, You're on fire today, bro. Zach just nodded, keeping his cool. Inside, though, everything was burning with adrenaline. He felt the strength in every muscle. The ball obeyed him perfectly. But the opponent was determined, too. The Red Sox pitcher, a tall lefty, didn't give the Yankees hitters much time either. After 3 innings, the scoreboard remained 0. In the 4th inning, the Yankees finally got their lead. Their best hitter hit a huge drive that went over the fence, scoring 2 runs. The stadium exploded with joy, 2-0 for the home team. Zach, watching from his arc, clenched his fist and exhaled, great lead. But the Red Sox wouldn't be the Red Sox if they gave up. In the 6th inning, after Zach's nearly flawless performance, they found a hole. 1 hit, then another, and 2 runners were on base. Their captain, a veteran hitter, came to bat. Zach threw a quick strike that didn't get caught. The captain saw the second pitch and hit it hard. Zach's heart sank as the ball sailed deep into the outfield. The Yankees' center fielder lunged back, but only watched as the ball landed out of bounds. A 3-run home run. The stands gasped and fell silent for a moment. The Red Sox players joyfully ran out to greet the captain, who had crossed all the bases. The score became 3-2 in Boston's favor, a coup. Zach stood on the mound, clutching the ball. A frustrating miss and such a costly punishment. He forced himself to calm down. All was not lost. The team had bailed him out so many times, Now it was his turn to bail out the team. Zach finished the seventh inning flawlessly without allowing anyone else on base. But the score was still 2-3, which meant that the likelihood of a change was growing. The manager would not keep even the best pitcher at such a high speed for too long. In the bottom of the eighth, the Yankees tied the game with a combination of luck and stubbornness. One player got on base with 4 runs scored, another scratched a hit. Then a sacrifice fly allowed the third baseman to reach home. It was 3-3, and the stadium came alive with another chant of, "Let's go Yankees!" Zach finished the job in the top of the ninth, keeping the Red Sox from taking the lead. He was exhausted, having pitched 9 full innings, giving it his all. When the manager shook his hand, pulling him out of the game with the score tied, the stadium gave him a standing ovation. "Excellent work," the coach said, looking into his eyes. "The boys will do the rest themselves." Zach nodded, clutching his glove to his chest, and walked off the field to the roar of the crowd. Somewhere deep in the visitor's arc, he caught sight of a familiar figure, TJ, standing at the fence, looking at him. His heart skipped a beat, but Zach held his gaze. Their eyes met. There was no way to read the emotion on TJ's face, and there was no time. Zach nodded almost imperceptibly either to himself or to his former friend and headed for the team's shelter. Extra innings began extra ones since the main time did not reveal a winner. In the 10th, neither team succeeded. The nervous trembling was transmitted to everyone without exception. Each batting decision could decide the fate of the series. In the 11th inning, the Red Sox manager brought out a new pitcher. TJ Zach felt a strange feeling inside. This was the moment of truth. T.J. Brown walked onto the mound at Yankee Stadium for the first time Zach had seen in years. There was a roar and a little hissing from the stands. The fans knew he was from Boston. Zach, standing at the fence in his arc-out, stared at the field. T.J. looked focused, though there was tension in his movements. His first pitch was a strike. The second, the batter missed. But on the third pitch, our hitter finally hooked the ball. A soft line drive right into the shortstop's glove, and he threw it to first base, making an out. 1 out. The next Yankees batter came out. TJ threw a couple of curvy balls. The batter barely saved himself from a strikeout, hitting it into foul trouble. With the count at 3-2, TJ decided to throw a fastball. The batter managed to react snap. The ball rolled along the ground between first and second base. Our runner sped to first like a bullet hit. The crowd perked up, sensing an opportunity. The manager replaced the next batter with a fresh, faster player, a clear hint of an attempt to steal a base. While TJ was concentrating on the pitch, our runner broke into a run to second base. The Red Sox catcher instantly threw the ball to steal. The umpire spread his arms safe. The stolen base was successful. Zach clenched his fists involuntarily. Now any hit could bring a winning point. TJ seemed nervous. He made 2 unsuccessful throws. Both times the ball bounced into the ground far from the base. The catcher barely kept the runner from running further. The count was 2-0. The batter patiently waited for his pitch. The chants of "Let's go Yankees" began to rise from the stands. People stood up in anticipation of a possible victory. Zach stood, barely breathing, not taking his eyes off his old friend on the mound. No matter how hard he tried to remain detached, his heart was beating off the charts both from the excitement of the sport and from another feeling. He was no longer angry at TJ, he even suddenly felt sorry for him. So much had passed between them, and now TJ had to withstand colossal pressure. But sport is sport. TJ pitched the third ball with a resigned air, and immediately there was a loud slap. The Yankees batter had hit it hard and true. The ball whistled over the head of the second baseman and rolled into the outfield. The second baseman ran for home as fast as he could. The Red Sox outfielder lunged for the ball, picked it up, and threw it toward home, but it was too late. Our runner had touched home before the ball. Safe, the chief judge spread his arms. Explosion. There's no other way to describe the roar that filled the stadium. The Yankees ran onto the field to celebrate the winning run. The runner who scored the point went down, sliding across the plate, but immediately jumped up and jumped into the arms of his teammates. Zach flew out of the arc out with the others. His heart was dancing with happiness. The final. They were going to the final. He was screaming along with everyone else, not even hearing his own voice. He was hugging whoever he could hear was Miguel laughing next to him. Here was his coach grabbing him by the shoulders. "We did it, man." In the midst of this swirl of joy, Zach suddenly noticed out of the corner of his eye a lone figure at the mound. TJ was still standing there. The rest of the Red Sox players had wandered to their dugout, and he stood frozen, staring into the roaring swirl of the Yankees' victory crowd. Without thinking, Zach emerged from the group of revelers and headed for the hill. His ears were still ringing, but his head was clear. He had to do this. TJ saw him approaching. His face was pale, his lips were pressed together. He took off his cap and rubbed his wet forehead awkwardly with his palm. Zach stopped a few steps away. It was the first time they stood face to face in so many years. For a few seconds, both were silent. Then Zach extended his hand. "Good game." The voice sounded hoarse, but confident. TJ looked at him with wide eyes. Then he shook Zach's hand with a trembling hand. "You are great. Congratulations." Zach nodded. He saw TJ swallow hard, obviously choosing his words. The crowd was still screaming and bustling around them, but it was like a bubble of silence had formed in the middle of the field. "Zach." TJ began, his voice hoarse. I don't even know. Thanks for coming." Zach suddenly realized that he felt neither anger nor pain, only a tired, slightly sad compassion for this man in front of him. So much time had passed. He tried to smile. "It's weird seeing you in a Red Sox uniform." TJ chuckled hoarsely. "It's strange to me. I also loved Yankee once for your sake, remember?" Zach nodded, lowering his hand. There was an awkward pause. He wanted to say something important, but the words wouldn't come. "How are you? How are you?" TJ finally blurted out, glancing sideways at the party behind Zach. "Okay," Zach answered quietly. "I live in New York, I play. I'm married, I have a son." TJ's eyes clouded over for a second. "I'm happy for you. You deserve it." "Thank you." TJ took a breath, then spoke quickly. "Look, Zach, I know this won't change anything, but forgive me for everything. I regret it every day." Zach's heart sank at the belated words. He sighed. "I have long since left this in the past." TJ nodded and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Okay, thank you." They were silent again. In the distance, reporters were already running onto the field. Cameramen were dragging cameras. Now the winners would be surrounded and interviewed. Zach knew that another minute and they would be interrupted. He extended his hand again, and this time TJ shook it firmly, like a man. "Take care, T," Zach said sincerely. "Good luck." "And you, take care of your family," TJ answered quietly. Zach saw a pained smile on his former friend's face, perhaps because he realized how far apart they were now. But relief was evident in TJ's eyes. They let go of each other. Zach turned to his celebrating team. One of the reporters was already running up to him with a microphone. Before he walked back, he took one last look at TJ. "Say hello, too." He wanted to say Amber, but stopped himself. It didn't matter. "Say hello to your family." TJ nodded, understanding the unspoken. Necessarily. At this point, they finally let each other go. Zach walked quickly back to his teammates. He was immediately mobbed. There were congratulations, laughter. Someone splashed a bottle of Gatorade right on his head. He closed his eyes, mocked, but absolutely happy. Somewhere in the stands, Lauren and Oliver were watching the scene. He knew his wife had seen his gesture, and he was sure she approved. Everything finally fell into place. That night, sitting in the noisy locker room, soaked in champagne and victory cries, Zach closed his eyes for a second. Before his mind's eye floated a vision of sunrise over a Connecticut lake, a crumpled sheet of paper with a farewell letter, the empty stands of the old field, and then Lauren's smile, her son's eyes, their home. The contrast was stark. The past was still there, but it no longer hurt. He had done it, and only the best was ahead. A few weeks later, Zach Holland walked down a familiar street in his native Milton, holding little Oliver in his arms. It was a quiet winter day, the air was crisp and clear. Lauren walked next to him, clinging to her husband's shoulder. They had come to Zach's parents for Christmas to show off their grown-up grandson and spend the holidays with their family. Milton hadn't changed much over the years, except that Zach seemed taller and bigger here than he had in his youth, when the houses, fences, and even the trees had looked bigger. As he passed the city park, he heard a cheerful noise and decided to turn off to see. There was a game going on at the playground for kids, probably the same Milton Raccoons, only a new generation. A handful of parents and friends stood around, cheering on the young players. Zach stopped at the fence. One red-haired boy on third base was diligently catching the ball. Another boy was hitting with such passion that a smile spread across Zach's face. "Look," Lauren said quietly, watching too. "They're so serious." "Yeah, that's exactly how we did it once," Zach nodded. Oliver whined, squirming in his arms for attention. Zach rocked his son gently, and the boy calmed down again, his eyes wide as he stared at the moving figures of the boys on the field. Someone in the audience turned around, hearing voices behind them, and froze in amazement. It was old Mr. Harris, who had been involved in the town's junior baseball league for many years. He didn't recognize Zach right away, but then his eyes widened. "Oh my God, it's Holland." Several people nearby looked at each other in surprise. Zach smiled sheepishly and raised his palm in greeting. "Hello, Mr. Harris." The old man, despite his age, quickly jumped closer, examining the tall man and his family. "Zach, boy, you're back with us. I've been following your career. Well done, champion." Zach blushed slightly. "Well, the champion is only a league champion for now. But I hope the World Series will soon be within reach." "Yes, yes, you will next season, I assure you," nodded Mr. Harris. "And who do we have here?" He looked into Oliver's face. "This is my son, Oliver," Zach introduced proudly, supporting the little boy who was seriously studying his unfamiliar grandfather. "Well, time flies." "Congratulations," the old man smiled at Lauren. "You got the best guy in our city." Lauren looked at Zach with shining eyes. "I know." They spent a few minutes talking with Mr. Harris, learning the latest news about the Raccoon League. It turned out that the team was still winning local tournaments. The old man kept trying to call Zach to say a few words to the boys after the game, but he politely declined. "Not today. Let them play calmly. I'll hold a separate training session for them sometime, if you don't mind." "Oh, they'll go crazy with joy. Of course, dear. Come whenever you like," Mr. Harris fussed. After saying goodbye, the Holland family moved on. Lauren patted her husband's hand affectionately. "I've planned a good deed training for the guys." "Why not?" Zach smiled. "In a few years, Oliver will catch up." He bounced his son lightly in his arms, and he burst into laughter. Zach's heart filled with warm tenderness. They passed the old field where the high school team had once stood. It was empty now, covered in a light dusting of snow. Zach slowed his pace. The rickety benches were still visible beyond the net, one even bearing a faded marker sign, Zach #12. He remembered TJ jokingly scribbling it after one of their high school victories. They had dreamed of great games to come, confident that nothing would ruin their friendship. A breeze blew across the field, stirring the tops of the pine trees. Zach briefly wondered where TJ was now. After that game, he heard that his friend had announced his retirement from baseball, that loss had been the final chord of his career. They said he had returned to Connecticut, started some kind of business, and nothing was known about Amber. Perhaps she, too, was living her own life somewhere. Zach suddenly realized that he sincerely wished them happiness. Let everyone have their own path. The main thing is peace in the soul. "What are you thinking about?" Lauren asked tenderly, looking into his face. Zach shook his head, coming out of his memories. "Well, I was reminiscing about my youth." He glanced around the empty field, and then at his wife and son, who were walking beside him. Lauren smiled at him, easily, confidently, lovingly. Oliver, smacking his pacifier, muttered something under his breath. Zach felt a quiet joy flowing inside him. He leaned down and kissed Lauren's temple. "You know, I'm happy." "Me too," she said, clinging to him a little tighter. "We have a wonderful life, don't we?" "The best," he agreed. They quickened their pace, catching up with Oliver, who suddenly energetically leaned forward in his dad's arms, reaching for something. The boy stretched out his little arms toward the school team stadium that towered nearby. Familiar stands were visible in the distance. "He already wants to go to the field," Lauren noted with a laugh. "Looks like it," Zach smiled. "Oh well, we'll teach him when he grows up." He touched his son's tiny fist and shook it slightly, as if before serving. "The main thing is that he plays with soul and is happy. The rest is not important." Oliver gave a happy hoot in response, as if agreeing with his father's words. Lauren laughed. Zach Holland, hugging his wife and holding his son tighter, strode forward towards his future, bright and calm, like a clear winter day over his hometown. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.